Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're looking for the absolute shortest path to understanding the most complex information, not just summarizing it, but truly getting the nuances, you are definitely in the right place.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are taking on, well, a challenge of pretty unprecedented scope. We're diving into an intense, symbolic, and deeply structural analysis. It's about the prophetic power entities laid out primarily in the book of Revelation. We are decoding the beasts and the harlot.
And yeah, this deep dive requires a really meticulous approach to the source material we're working from. It's not just a straightforward interpretation.
Right.
It's a comprehensive synthesis. It cross-references texts from Daniel, Revelation, and historical empires. So our mission today is pure clarity.
Clarity, exactly.
Because the source is so precise, we need to map out these interconnected identities, like who are the seven kings, what is the eighth king, and crucially, how does the political entity, the source calls it the scarlet beast, how does that differ from the religious entity, the sea beast?
Yeah, and connecting these symbols back to a concrete timeline, that seems vital. We're not dealing with vague future predictions here.
No, not at all.
We're analyzing a structural blueprint. And it seems to revolve around the last 1 week, right? That 7-year prophetic period.
That's the absolute center of this analysis, yes. The source provides a remarkably detailed roadmap of power shifts that occur specifically within those 7 years.
Okay.
So the source file, it focuses intensely on identifying these figures symbolically, establishing their connection to specific historical empires that governed Israel.
Ah, okay. The Israel connection is key.
It's critical for the source's interpretation. And then it projects how they merge into this centralized, final global power structure leading directly to the second coming of Christ.
Right.
Basically, if you understand the definitions of these entities,
Yeah.
you understand the timeline.
Right. That brings us to the core challenge then, managing all this complexity. Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at what the ultimate merging of global politics, economic coercion, and religious control.
Pretty much, yeah.
All wrapped up in this highly symbolic language. So we need to be really careful, almost surgical, in using the specific definitions the source provides, starting, I guess, with the main global power, the big one.
Exactly. The primary global geopolitical entity that really dominates the entire narrative. The beast from the sea.
Okay, the beast from the sea, Revelation 13, that's the first major figure we encounter, and it sounds immediately terrifying. A composite monster, 10 horns, 7 heads, names of blasphemy all over it.
It is. And the source interprets the sea itself, not literally as an ocean, but more symbolically.
Yes.
As peoples, multitudes, and nations. The turbulent mass of humanity from which these global power structures tend to rise.
Right, this sort of chaotic political sea.
Exactly. It's the ultimate political consolidation. And what makes this sea beast so significant is its lineage, its heritage.
Oh, okay.
While many commentators focus on the fourth beast in Daniel, which is usually identified as Rome.
Right, the iron teeth.
Yeah. The source emphasizes that this sea beast is something more. It identifies it specifically as the world beast government, the global entity.
World beast government.
Yep.
Okay. So how do we grasp its power? What are its component parts?
Well, think back to Daniel's vision. Remember the sequence of animals representing empires.
Yeah, the lion, the bear, the leopard, and then the fourth terrifying beast.
Right. So is the sea beast simply the Roman Empire continuing, or is it something new, a combination?
That's the question. Is it just Rome 2.0?
According to this source, it's the ultimate evolution. That's why it labels it the Super Rome.
Super Rome, I like that.
It's a blended empire. It's taken the most potent characteristics of those 4 historical empires that dominated Israel and consolidated them. Think of it like a political mega merger.
Okay, let's break down that blend then. Which traits did it absorb from which empire?
Okay, so you see characteristics from all 4 Danielic beasts merged into this one sea beast.
Right.
First, it has the swiftness, the global reach like the leopard. That symbolizes Greece under Alexander the Great. Speed and coverage.
Makes sense.
Second, it has the massive consuming nature of the bear that references Persia and the Medes. Think sheer scale, geographical reach.
Just huge and powerful.
Huge and powerful. Third, it possesses the mighty, decisive, authoritative language, the lion's mouth, that represents Babylon.
Babylon, the foundational anti-God system.
Exactly, the origin point for that kind of religious and political idolatry. And finally, it operates with the crushing, centralized, legalistic iron rule of the original fourth beast.
Which is Rome.
Which is Rome. Iron discipline, legal structures, military might.
So, wow, it's not just a political power. It's like the the physical embodiment of the cumulative wickedness and political organization of every empire that tried to rule over God's people, but amplified, global scale.
Precisely. This super Rome, this world beast government, symbolizes the total consolidation of political power from Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. The source highlights that the fourth nation, in Nebuchadnezzar's vision, Rome, well, it's destined to be destroyed when Christ returns.
Right.
But before that happens, it succeeded and actually strengthened into this massive, singular global power, the seventh head.
Okay, this sounds like pure centralized political authority, but what about the spiritual drive? How does the source explain the engine behind this massive geopolitical entity? It seems impossible for a single world government to just pop up without some kind of unified dark push.
Well, that impetus is explicitly named in Revelation 13.4. It's the dragon. Satan, yes. Yeah. The text says the dragon gives the beast its power, its throne, and its great authority. This is a critical theological point for the source.
It's not just politics.
No. The world beast government isn't just politically convenient or historically inevitable. It's operating under a direct, supernatural authorization from the ultimate Antichrist source. That authority is why it can enforce global mandates across every tribe, people, and language. It has spiritual backing.
I remember you mentioned a nuance earlier regarding its origin, the sea versus the abyss. Can we clarify the source's position on that? Because that connection seems important for later figures.
Yes, good point. The source does acknowledge that the sea beast is sometimes linked to the entity that ascends from the abyss, or Mashiach, as it's termed.
Right.
But it insists on a distinction, at least functionally. The sea, as we said, refers to the masses of humanity. That establishes the beast's political origin among people, nations.
Okay.
The abyss, however, is seen as a deeper domain within Hades, a specific holding place for certain demonic entities. So while they might share an ultimate spiritual origin or destiny.
The source separates their immediate point of emergence.
Exactly. The sea beast, as described here in Revelation 13, rises functionally from the political and social chaos of the world. The entity that ascends specifically from the abyss. Well, that's introduced later as the eighth king.
Yeah.
Related, yes, but a distinct spiritual and historical entity.
Okay, that clarity on domain's political origins versus like a spiritual holding tank, that's vital, because now we have to dissect those seven heads, and they are themselves historical political domains, right?
Yeah.
Hashtag tag 3, decoding the seven heads, the seven kings, and the eighth king.
Right. This is where we move from the general terrifying image to a specific prophetic head count. We're dealing with the seven heads now. And the source defines them not as seven individual leaders like presidents or kings.
Correct.
But as seven distinct political powers or countries.
Nations, yes. That definition is absolutely foundational to the source's entire structure. And it's very strict about the criteria.
What's the main criterion?
Only nations connected directly to the physical bloodline Israel are considered prophetically significant in this specific context. Ah, okay. So that explains why you wouldn't include, say, ancient China or maybe Nimrod's original Babylon.
Exactly. They simply didn't fulfill the criteria of controlling or warring against the people of God during their foundational prophetic history, according to this interpretation. The focus is narrow and specific to Israel's historical oppressors.
Got it. That criterion is essential for the list then. So let's slow down and actually list these seven kings, these nations, and maybe briefly note their role regarding Israel.
Okay, let's track them chronologically based on the source. Number 1 is Egypt.
Makes sense. The first major power to enslave Israel, Genesis and Exodus.
Right. Represents that historical beginning of oppression.
Assyria.
Known for its brutality.
Yeah.
Scattering the northern kingdom of Israel.
Yeah, represents that crushing military might.
Babylon.
Destroyed the first temple, exiled the southern kingdom, and you mentioned critically the origin of that anti-God religious system.
Precisely. The foundational system. Nebuchadnezzar's empire.
Persia. The Medes and Persians.
They were actually relatively benevolent, right? Letting the Jews return, rebuild the temple.
Comparatively, yes, but they were still the dominant political force controlling the territory for centuries. So they fit the criteria of ruling over Israel.
Okay. Number 5.
Greece. Defined by cultural assimilation, Hellenization, and military conquest under Alexander. Brief but profound impact, setting the stage for later conflicts like the Maccabean Revolt.
Got it. And number 6.
Rome. This is the empire that existed when John received the vision on Patmos, the crushing legalistic and military ruler, destroyed the Second Temple in 70 AD, maintained control throughout the New Testament period, the power that is.
Okay, so that's 6 historical empires that dominated Israel, which brings us to the 7th, The future-facing one.
Correct. Number 7 is the world beast government. This is the super Rome we just discussed.
Right.
The entity described as not yet come in John's time. This is the final global political power structure that emerges in the very last days at the start of that 7-year period.
Okay, so if Rome is the 6th king, we have to discuss the wound and healing, described in Revelation 13.3. It affects one of the heads. This seems like where the political history really shifts into the prophetic endgame scenario.
It really does. The source interprets this wound and healing through the lens of Roman history and, significantly, the influence of the papacy.
Okay, how so?
The wound is interpreted as Rome, the political empire, being seemingly slain unto death or severely weakened.
When did that happen?
The source points to the period often called the Dark Ages, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The political power vacuum in the West was increasingly filled by the growing religious authority of what the source terms the Babylonian papacy, or Gyeongwangwon.
So hold on. The religious power kind of takes over the weakened political body, and the political body, Rome, appears to die. Is that the idea?
That's precisely the interpretation. The political head, Rome, appeared to be slain, but the healing signifies its recovery. It's a political resurrection, if you will.
How does it recover?
Rome, the system, recovers its global strength. It transitions from that weakened medieval structure back into a potent, centralized global entity, the 7th king, the world beast government, Super Rome.
And this apparent resurrection, this healing, that's what makes the world marvel.
Exactly. Revelation 13.3 says, the whole earth marveled after the beast. It's this system that looked dead, but then comes roaring back with unprecedented global power. That refusal to die is key.
Okay, this refusal to die brings us to what you call the absolutely critical distinction, the one that you said makes or breaks the listener's understanding of this whole deep dive.
Yes.
The difference between the 7th king and the 8th king. We need a really clear metaphor here. If the 7th king is the recovered global political machine, the source calls it the Scarlet Beast, right?
That's right. The political entity is the Scarlet Beast.
So if the 7th king is the Scarlet Beast, the political vehicle, what then is the 8th king?
Okay, let's use your vehicle metaphor.
Yeah.
The 7th king, the Scarlet Beast, is the vehicle. It's the raw political, economic, and military mechanism, the world beast government itself.
Right. The 8th king is the driver. The 8th king is actually the Sea Beast.
Wait, Sea Beast is the 8th king? I thought the Sea Beast was the world beast government, the Super Rome.
This is where the source makes a very fine but crucial distinction based on Revelation 17. The Sea Beast manifests as the global power, but specifically when it's being controlled by the religious entity. The 8th king is the religious entity controlling the political vehicle.
Okay, so the 8th king is defined by its relationship to the 7th king. It's not a separate entity entirely.
It's defined by its controlling relationship, yes. The 8th king is defined as the Harlot, which the source identifies as the super Babylonian Roman papacy riding the Scarlet Beast, the 7th king world government.
Riding the beast.
It's a power derived from and riding the 7th political entity. The key theological definition the source gives for the 8th king is the super Babylonian Roman papacy. Chobabelo Roma Gyeongwangwon. That's the entity embodying the 8th king. Okay, the super papacy is the 8th king, the driver. The world government is the 7th king, the vehicle. But Revelation 17 says the beast that carries the harlot, the one that comes from the abyss, is an 8th king. It is of the 7. How could it be the 8th and be one of the previous 7 systems?
That's the deep connection back to its origins. Remember, we distinguished the sea and the abyss.
Yeah.
The 8th king, the sea beast, in its controlling aspect, is the one said to ascend from the abyss. This is the system that existed before John's time, was not present as the dominant power in his time, but reemerges at the end, yet is, or will be.
And the before entity is?
Identified by the source as Babylon, the spirit, the system of that ancient anti-God, idolatrous, oppressive government which started way back with Nimrod and was embodied in Nebuchadnezzar's empire, the 3rd king. That spirit never truly died. So the 8th king, the super papacy, is the final greatest expression of that ancient Babylonian system. Therefore, it is the 8th in sequence or manifestation, but it is of the 7 in spirit and nature. It's the resurrected spirit of Babylon, king #3, wearing the global body of resurrected Rome, king #6, evolving into king #7.
Wow. Okay, that makes the distinction crystal clear. The 7th king, Scarlet Beast, is the temporary global body. The 8th king, Sea Beast, embodied by the super papacy, is the ancient Babylonian spirit controlling that global body. but only during the crucial first half of the final 7 years.
Exactly. That dynamic partnership, the harlot riding the beast, is what defines the start of the end-time prophecy, according to this source.
Okay, so we transition now into the active phase. The moment the 8th king, the super papacy, takes the reins of the 7th king, the world government. We're now in the first 3.5 years of that last 1 week. What's the precise timing granted for this oppressive regime?
The source is absolute on this measurement. The sea beast, that super papacy riding the global government, is given authority to act for exactly 42 months.
42 months.
And we need to be crystal clear for you listening. 42 months is precisely 3.5 years. Or, using another prophetic measure, 1,260 days.
Okay, 1,260 days.
That duration is the defining characteristic of the first half of the last 1 week. The events we're about to discuss are strictly contained within that 1,260-day window.
Got it. And what defines the primary action of the 8th king, the super papacy, during this 42-month period?
2 things primarily: persecution and absolute global rule. Revelation 13.7 emphasizes the sea beast is granted authority to make war with the saints and to overcome them.
Overcome the saints.
Yes, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. The source suggests this is a time of truly globalized religious oppression. Resistance to the 8th king's decrees is met with force, potentially fatal force. It's an era where the entire political infrastructure is mobilized for a religious agenda.
Let's dive deeper then into the harlot herself. Revelation 17 describes her as Mystery, Babylon the great city that reigns over the kings of the earth. The source identifies her as the super Babylonian Roman papacy, and also, intriguingly, as the son of perdition, Mael Mangwi Adul.
Yes, that linkage is made.
What does her act of riding the scarlet beast physically imply about her power? What does that look like on the ground?
Riding is such a powerful symbol, isn't it? It signifies control, direction, and also kind of parasitic utilization.
Right. The rider directs the animal.
Exactly. The harlot is the controlling intelligence. It means the world government, the Scarlet Beast, acts as the enforcement arm for the religious and doctrinal agenda of the papacy. She dictates global policy, economic mandates, international agreements, all ultimately serving the purpose of establishing mandatory global allegiance to her system.
And central to this control are the blasphemies mentioned. The sea beast, under the harlot's control, speaks great things and blasphemies. The source argues these aren't just vague insults against God, but specific, identifiable claims against his nature and authority. We need to elaborate on the 3 key blasphemies the source highlights.
Yes, the source details 3 specific claims, Shamlam Doinmal, connecting the prophetic language to, well, historical claims of power attributed to this system.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, claiming to be God. This is the ultimate claim of temporal and spiritual supremacy. The son of perdition, remember, is described as sitting in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God.
Right, 2 Thessalonians.
So this speaks to a claim of infallibility, supreme divine authority on earth, effectively blurring the line between God's rule and the institution's leadership.
Okay, that's huge. What's the second?
Second, claiming authority to forgive sins. Scripturally, the authority to forgive sins belongs to God alone through Christ. The harlot-controlled system, the source argues, asserts this divine prerogative, establishing a human intermediary, or the institution itself, as necessary for salvation and absolution. This reinforces the religious entity's essential role in controlling the spiritual lives of people globally.
Controlling access to God, essentially.
That's the implication. And the third, blasphemy.
The third is attempting to change times and laws. This comes from Daniel 7.25, describing the actions of the little horn power, which the source links to this system.
Okay, times and laws. What does that mean practically? This is where the source gets very specific about historical and doctrinal shifts. Changing laws, you'll be up, refers explicitly in this interpretation to attempts to modify the 10 Commandments.
Also,
Specifically, removing or altering the second commandment against idol worship, and perhaps subdividing the 10th to keep the number 10. Changing times, today, refers to shifting the designated holy days, the appointed times of worship.
like the Sabbath.
Exactly. The source points directly to the historical shift from the seventh-day Sabbath to Sunday worship as a defining act of this authority asserting the institution's power over God's divine calendar and law.
Wow. Okay, so claiming divinity, claiming power over sin, and claiming power over God's own law and appointed times. That is an immense scope of power.
It is. It's redefining global spiritual practice, legal jurisdiction, and even the definition of what is divine. The Eighth King establishes the blueprint for global persecution and mandatory worship.
But implementing that blueprint across the entire globe requires an administrator, right? Someone on the ground making it happen.
Precisely. And this is where the second beast of Revelation 13 steps in, the land beast. The false prophet, hashtag tag V, the land beast enforcing the mark.
Okay, so if the sea beast, the Eighth King superpapacy, is the strategic leader, the mastermind, and the scarlet beast, the Seventh King world government, is the political vehicle, the muscle,
Yes.
then the land beast is the operative, the chief propagandist, the enforcer. You called him the hypnotist earlier, and that seems pretty apt.
Yeah. He is the master of illusion, absolutely. The land beast is explicitly identified by the source and by Revelation itself later on as the false prophet, Jiujitsu.
Okay.
He rises from the land, or earth, which often symbolizes established religious territory or stable political ground, perhaps suggesting an origin within the existing religious structures, maybe even near Israel. His entire function is to make the global system work on the ground level, to sell it.
And his appearance is crucial, right? It's designed to deceive. Revelation 13.1 event says he had 2 horns like a lamb.
Yes, Armenian, the Greek word. It implies lamb-like.
So he appears benign, maybe even Christ-like, gentle, but he speaks like the dragon.
That deceptive packaging is the absolute key to his mass appeal. He's the religious figurehead who seemingly champions faith, peace, global unity, but whose underlying agenda is pure satanic control, enforcing the will of the first beast.
So how does he function? What are his main jobs?
The source details his functional role in a few key areas based on Revelation 13. First, he is given all the delegated authority of the first beast, the sea beast, the Eighth King superpapacy. He acts as the official mouthpiece and executor of the superpapacy's global mandates. He carries out the orders.
He's the CEO, implementing the chairman's vision?
Kind of, yeah. Second, and this is crucial, he uses his authority to force, the word is poio, to make or compel all inhabitants of the earth to worship the first beast, specifically the beast whose deadly wound was healed.
So the focus is on allegiance to the resurrected system, the healed super realm.
Exactly. Worship the system that came back from the dead.
Okay, but to achieve that level of enforced global allegiance, he can't just rely on sermons or political pressure, surely. Especially if people are resistant.
Well, he needs more. He needs miracles, signs and wonders.
What kind of power does the source detail, and why is it so effective?
The source emphasizes that the false prophet performs great signs, megasemeia. We're talking about spectacular displays of power designed specifically to mimic God's own prophets and deceive the masses.
Like what?
The most notable act mentioned is making fire come down from heaven in the sight of men. Right there, publicly.
Wow, like Elijah on Mount Carmel, but fake.
Exactly. The source highlights this. It's a spectacle designed to overwhelm skepticism, to look utterly convincing. It easily surpasses the feats of historical false prophets, like those of Baal and Asherah that Elijah confronted. This is deception on a global, undeniable scale, convincing billions that the authority behind the beast system is legitimate, or at least divinely endorsed.
So he uses these divine-seeming acts for a very specific material goal, getting people to build an idol and instituting a mandatory ID system.
Precisely. His deceptive power leads directly first to the creation of the beast's idol. He deceives people into making an image icon to the beast, the one that had the wound by a sword and lived, the healed system.
An image, like a statue. Or something else.
The source doesn't specify the exact form, but it's an object of worship representing the beast system. And here's a really horrifying detail from verse 15. The false prophet is granted power to give life or breath pneuma to this image.
He animates the idol.
He animates it, allowing it to speak. This isn't just a statue anymore, it's an active oracle, seemingly. And this animated idol becomes a functional test of allegiance. It causes orders the death of anyone who refuses to worship the image of the beast, the symbol of the global system.
That's the mechanism generating martyrdom during those 12 and 60 days. Refuse to worship the talking idol, you die.
That's the implication. This level of coercion, blending religious fervor, miraculous signs, and deadly threats, culminates in the most famous or infamous symbol of the end times, the mark of the beast, 666.
Right. And why is the false prophet, the land beast, the figure responsible for enforcing this mark?
Because he's the one who controls the religious loyalty, the public persuasion, and likely the necessary technological apparatus for a global enforcement system. He's the front man making it happen.
And the mark itself. What does the source elaborate on regarding its function? It's on the right hand or forehead.
Yes. The false prophet causes all people, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark, charagma, on their right hand or on their foreheads. The source strongly defines this mark identified by the number 666, which is called the number of a man, as being absolutely mandatory for commerce, for economic participation.
The economic lever.
Right.
That seems incredibly powerful. If you can't transact, you basically can't survive in a modern world.
Exactly. The source is absolute on this, based on Revelation 13.17, that no one may buy or sell, agerazo kai polio, except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name.
Wow. So this points towards a final stage, completely centralized global economy, doesn't it? Maybe digital currency, maybe some kind of universal biometric ID.
Yeah.
But it's tied directly to allegiance to the beast system.
That's the strong implication. If you refuse the mark, you are instantly systemically cut off from the economic lifeblood of the planet. You can't buy food, pay rent, access services, nothing.
Let's pause on the number itself, 666. The text calls it the number of a man. Does the source offer any definitive interpretations of what 666 symbolizes in practical terms beyond just being the identifier on the mark?
The primary interpretation offered by the source focuses on the symbolism of the number 6 itself. In biblical numerology, 7 often represents divine completion or perfection.
Right.
6, therefore, represents man, always falling short of divine perfection. It's the number of human effort, human systems, independent of God.
So 666 is...
Man. Triple emphasis on humanity's attempt to achieve perfection, build its own utopia, its own system of governance, and even salvation, entirely independent of God. It represents the pinnacle of human pride and self-reliance, embodied in the political head, the 7th king scarlet beast, and enforced by the religious apparatus led by the false prophet, land beast. It is the number representing a system created entirely by man's hubris.
Okay, so this mandatory economic allegiance, either you take the mark and participate, or you refuse and are excluded, potentially martyred. This is the central conflict of the first 42 months, the first half of the week.
That's the core struggle described for that period, yes.
So just to summarize this first half clearly for everyone listening, the superpapacy, the 8th king, the harlot, is writing and directing the global political machine, the 7th king, the scarlet beast. Meanwhile, the false prophet, the land beast, is using spectacular miracles in the thread of economic exclusion via the mark 6666 to force global worship of the system and allegiance to the harlot. This leads to intense persecution of the saints who resist. And this whole phase lasts exactly 1,260 days.
You've got it. That 1,260-day period, dominated by the harlot and enforced by the false prophet, sets the stage for the next dramatic shift. The catastrophic hinge point of the prophecy.
Right.
When that 1,260-day period of the harlot's rule and the saints' persecution finally ends, the focus shifts dramatically. It moves from human-led persecution of the saints to direct divine judgment upon the earth and the beast system itself.
Okay, so what specific event signals the definitive close of that first half, the end of the 1,260 days?
According to the source's timeline, the close is signaled by a couple of key events in sequence. First, the ministry of the 2 witnesses who have been prophesying and protected throughout those 1,260 days comes to an end. They finish their testimony.
And then they're killed, right, by the beast from the abyss.
Yes, Revelation 11 says, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit, the abyss, will make war against them, overcome them, and kill them. Their death marks the end of that specific phase of testimony.
Okay. What happens immediately after that?
Following their brief death and resurrection ascension described in Revelation 11, 2 related major events occur rapidly. First, the 7th trumpet sounds. This trumpet is huge. It announces that the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ.
Declaration of God's ultimate sovereignty.
Exactly. And linked to this, the source places the first resurrection here the moment the saints who died in Christ, including those martyred during the 1,260 days, are resurrected and caught up together with living believers into the air to meet the Lord.
The rapture event.
The rapture event, yes, associated with the 7th trumpet. And then with the saints removed, the most intense period of judgment begins on the earth below.
This is the pouring out of the 7 bowls of God's wrath, right?
Yeah.
Also called the 7 last plagues, Ilgab-Chang.
Correct. The 7 vials or bowls.
We need to really detail the severity of this period. If the earlier trumpet judgments, while bad, only seem to affect like a third of the earth or its systems, what's the scope of these bowl plagues?
The scope is devastating. It moves beyond partial judgments toward a total functional collapse of Earth's systems. And importantly, the 7 plagues are poured out specifically upon those who received the mark of the beast and worshipped his image. It's targeted judgment.
Okay, so what are some of the effects?
The source details severe systemic environmental and societal destruction following the sequence in Revelation 16. 1. On land people. Grievous sores afflict those with the mark. Direct physical torment. 2. On the sea. The sea is turned into the blood of a dead man, killing every living creature in it. Total marine ecosystem collapse. 3. On rivers fresh water. The rivers and springs also become blood. No safe drinking water.
Unimaginable thirst and disease.
Absolutely. Then number 4. 4. On the sun atmosphere. The sun is given power to scorch men with fire. This suggests massive atmospheric damage, maybe ozone layer destruction, or intense solar flares, leading to unbearable heat and radiation. Survival outside shelter becomes nearly impossible. 5. On the beast's kingdom. Darkness falls specifically upon the throne and kingdom of the beast. Political chaos, breakdown of command and control. People gnaw their tongues because of the pain and sores but still don't repent. 6. On the Euphrates. The great river Euphrates is dried up explicitly to prepare the way for the kings from the east. Geopolitical and military implications there. 7. Global cataclysm. The 7th bowl triggers a massive earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth. Islands flee, mountains disappear, huge hailstones fall. Just utter planetary reshaping.
The earth has basically become a wasteland, scorched, poisoned, shaken apart. This is a stark contrast to the New World Order of peace and prosperity, presumably promised by the Harlot and the Beast system earlier.
An absolute contradiction, and this discrepancy, the delivery of fire, blood, darkness, and pain instead of global peace and unity, this is the motive, according to the source, for the largest political upheaval described within the prophecy itself.
Betrayal.
It is the ultimate betrayal. The 7 plagues expose the harlot's promises as a complete and utter lie. The world beast government, the scarlet beast, the 7th king, and the 10 horns.
Who were the 10 horns again?
Revelation 17 identifies them as 10 kings who receive authority with the beast for 1 hour, a short, specific period. They represent, perhaps, 10 regional political powers or blocs who initially supported the beast system, giving their power and authority to it.
Okay, so the political powers, the 7th king, and these 10 supporting powers, they realize what?
They realize they have been utterly deceived by the religious power, the harlot that was riding them and directing them. The super papacy delivered global doom, not dominion. They followed her right into catastrophic judgment.
And the response is not repentance, it's rage. Focused rage against the harlot.
Shocking and violent rage. Yes, Revelation 17.16 is incredibly explicit and brutal. God actually puts it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, which includes executing judgment on the harlot.
So the political machine turns on its driver. What exactly does the scarlet beast, along with the 10 horns, do to the harlot?
The text says they will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire.
Eat her flesh and burn her with fire. That's incredibly graphic.
It signifies total destruction, utter humiliation, and complete repudiation. This is the swift and absolute annihilation of the super papacy, the harlot, the 8th king, by the very political apparatus. The scarlet beast, the 7th king, it used to rule the world. The vehicle destroys its driver.
Okay, this violent event completely reconfigures the identity of the dominant power structure on Earth for the final part of the 7 years, the second half. This is that crucial moment of shifting identities we absolutely must clarify for you listening.
Absolutely essential. You must internalize the shift to follow the source's logic. Before the 7 plagues, first half 1260 days, the dominant global power structure is effectively the sea beast. This entity represents the 8th king. This equals the harlot super papacy plus the scarlet beast world government. The key point is the harlot is in control.
Writer directing the vehicle. Got it.
After the 7 plagues, second half remaining period, the harlot is violently destroyed, burned, gone. The global power structure is now the independent scarlet beast. This entity is the pure 7th king, the world beast government operating without the harlot's influence. It has somehow survived the plagues, though its kingdom is in darkness and chaos, and now operates independently, driven purely by political and military defiance against God.
So the political vehicle survived the catastrophic judgment, maybe damaged but still functional, but the religious driver was utterly destroyed in the process.
That's the picture painted by the source.
Okay, quick question then. Does the false prophet, the land beast, also vanish when the harlot is destroyed? He was enforcing her system.
No, and that is a vital point the source makes. The land beast, the false prophet, remains active alongside the now independent scarlet beast, the 7th king.
Still doing miracles. Still enforcing the mark.
his role seems to shift. He's no longer enforcing the harlot's specific religious doctrines or the associated idol worship. Remember, the plagues targeted those with the mark, and the saints, the primary targets of persecution, have been resurrected, raptured.
Ah, right.
His motivation, along with the now independent Scarlet Beast, becomes purely military and defiant. They work together using deception. The false prophet's specialty Revs 16.13 mentions unclean spirits like frogs coming from his mouth to gather the kings of the earth.
Feather them for what?
To gather the severely devastated military forces of the world for the final, desperate confrontation against the returning Christ, the battle that culminates at Armageddon. So the need for the economic coercion of the mark has likely passed, and the focus shifts entirely to military mobilization against God himself. Tag 7, Conclusion and Final Destinies.
Okay, so we've tracked the prophecy through the rise of the beasts, the harlot's 42-month reign, her judgment during the plagues, and the emergence of the devastated but still defiant seventh king, the Scarlet Beast, acting alone with the false prophet. We're now at the very, very end of the 7-year period.
The climax.
Despite the earth having been basically scorched, poisoned, and shaken apart by the plagues, the political structures, the Scarlet Beast and its armies, rallied by the false prophet, still managed to mobilize for one final, seemingly suicidal stand.
The persistence of that rebellion, even amidst total environmental collapse and divine judgment, really speaks volumes about the depth of their commitment to the anti-God system, doesn't it?
Really does.
The World Beast government, Scarlet Beast, Seventh King, gathers its armies, along with the kings of the earth, for the Battle of Armageddon. They actually believe they can wage war against the divine power they know is responsible for the plagues. It's the final act of ultimate political and military defiance.
And this, of course, leads us to the ultimate, definitive conclusion. The physical return of the Lord Jesus Christ to earth, as described in Revelation 19. What is the immediate, non-negotiable fate of these two remaining prophetic figures, the Scarlet Beast and the false prophet?
Their end is incredibly abrupt and decisive. The Lord Jesus Christ returns with the armies of heaven, and the judgment upon these two figures is instantaneous. Revelation 19.20 is explicit. The Scarlet Beast, World Beast government, and the Land Beast, false prophet, are captured.
Captured, not killed in battle.
Captured alive. And it's crucial to note, they are not killed and then judged later. They are captured and thrown alive directly into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone.
Alive into the lake of fire.
Yes. The source emphasizes they are the very first two entities, the first residents, if you will, to occupy the lake of fire. Their judgment is immediate and final.
Okay, that eliminates the political, seventh king, and the religious enforcer, false prophet. What about the ultimate source of the power behind the whole system, the dragon, Satan?
He's dealt with next, but differently. Immediately following the judgment of the beast and false prophet, Revelation 20 describes the dragon, that ancient serpent, Satan, being seized. He's bound with a massive chain and cast into the abyss, Mujirgang again.
The abyss, not the lake of fire.
Not yet. He's cast into the abyss and it's sealed over him, specifically so he can deceive the nations no more for exactly 1,000 years.
The millennium.
Exactly. His imprisonment initiates the millennial reign of Christ on earth. So he is incarcerated, not permanently judged like the beast and false prophet, until the end of that 1,000-year period. Only after the millennium and a brief release and final rebellion is he cast into the lake of fire.
Okay, that hierarchical judgment is interesting. The human political components go straight into the fire, while the original demonic source is imprisoned for a fixed term first.
It really solidifies the identity of the beast and false prophet, the political and religious leaders of the final rebellion, as the primary objects of immediate final judgment at Christ's return. Satan's full reckoning is postponed.
And what happens to the earth itself after Armageddon and these judgments?
Following these judicial actions, the Force notes the description of the first heaven and first earth passing away, possibly consumed by fire, referencing 2 Peter 3, and the establishment of the new heaven and new earth where righteousness dwells. The final state.
Wow. Okay. This was an incredibly intricate, demanding, but hopefully clarifying deep dive. We covered thousands of years of historical influence and a projected, detailed 7-year timeline. For the person listening who has absorbed all this information, what are the 3 essential, maybe actionable takeaways to hold on to when trying to interpret this complex, symbolic material according to the source we've explored?
Okay, 3 key takeaways based on this specific interpretation. First, really master the complexity of the symbolic identities using that analogy we developed. Always distinguish between the seventh king, the political vehicle, the scarlet beast, the world government, and the eighth king, the controlling religious driver, the sea beast, as embodied by the super papacy harlot. And crucially, remember, the driver, eighth, gets destroyed halfway through, leaving the vehicle seventh to crash into Christ's return alone alongside the false prophet.
Okay, driver versus vehicle. Got it. Second.
Second, anchor the prophetic timeline firmly to that 42-month, 1,260-day period and the specific triggering event. The 1,260 days equals the harlot's rule and the persecution phase. The 7 plagues mark the turning point, the judgment, and the destruction of the harlot. Understanding that midpoint transition is absolutely everything for this framework.
42 months, harlot's reign, plagues Zealot's fall. Clear.
And third, grasp the functional nature of the conflict during that first half. The central demand is mandatory, global worship, and it's enforced primarily through deception, miracles by the false prophet, and economic coercion, the mark of the beast. The ability to buy and sell is explicitly tied to allegiance. So this is fundamentally portrayed as a conflict fought over finance and faith. Control through the economy. #tag8 outro.
That clarity on the rider versus the vehicle, the eighth king controlling the seventh king, really does feel like the absolute key that unlocks the specific source material's interpretation. It moves the discussion past just general, vague fear about the beast and into a more structural analysis of how religious and political power might interact in this end-times scenario.
It is. It's a remarkable synthesis, really, weaving together ancient texts, historical interpretations, and prophetic timelines into a cohesive, albeit complex, framework. It requires careful attention to the definitions. But if we connect this final analysis right back to the very foundation we started with, the source's strict definition, that the 7 kings are exclusively nations that historically impacted Israel. Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, leading to the final world beast government.
Right.
If that premise holds, it culminates in one final necessary reflection for you, the listener, to ponder.
Okay, what's that final provocative thought we should carry forward from this deep dive?
We established that this entire prophetic structure from ancient Egypt onward is defined by its relationship to Israel. And the end times prophetic clock, according to the source, really starts ticking with the emergence of the 7th king, the world beast government, which is itself defined as the consolidation of all these prior anti-Israel empires.
Okay.
So what does the necessary emergence of a global political superpower, whose very identity is defined by this historical context involving Israel, what does that emergence imply about the geopolitical status, the autonomy, and perhaps the security situation of the nation of Israel at the precise moment the last 1 week begins?
You're saying for this prophecy to unfold as described, Israel must be in a position where the entire world's political apparatus becomes defined by its relationship to the Jewish state.
That seems to be a necessary precondition for this specific interpretation. It forces us to consider what specific political, diplomatic, or even conflict-related international preconditions would need to be met for Israel to become such a central geopolitical flashpoint that it mandates or allows for the immediate rise of this global super Rome focused, in part, on it. What has to happen on the world stage first?
That's a phenomenal question. It shifts the focus from just the endgame players to the geopolitical setup required before the game even begins. It encourages us to look at the current global stage, perhaps, for signs of those specific political and diplomatic prerequisites taking shape.
It adds another layer to consider, definitely.
Well, thank you for expertly guiding us through this incredibly detailed, very specific, and complex analysis. It's a lot to take in. To you listening, we really hope this deep dive provides you with the clarity needed to navigate these powerful and often confusing prophetic structures as presented in this particular source.
Indeed. And until next time, remember that critical thinking, understanding the definitions and the timeline is your best defense against information overload when dealing with material like this.
Couldn't agree more. Keep diving deep.